The council chamber of the Thorxian Empire fell silent as Ambassador Vexthor reviewed the holographic display one final time. Around him, representatives from 47 star systems waited, their various appendages twitching with anticipation. The data was clear, undeniable, laughably simple. Humanity had ignored 3 official warnings, so Vexthor clicked his mandibles together in what passed for amusement among his species. The pink-skinned bipeds think they can simply refuse our trade sanctions. He paused, letting the absurdity hang in the recycled atmosphere. Remarkable, truly remarkable. Supreme Coordinator Kaldrex, a being whose species had conquered 12 systems before breakfast became a concept, leaned forward on his hover throne, his 6 eyes narrowed to slits. Ambassador, you find this situation amusing. Forgive me, Supreme Coordinator. Vexthor straightened his posture, though the humor still danced in his vocal harmonics. It's just, well, look at them. They've been spacefaring for what? 200 of their years. We've been navigating the stars for 17,000. They have exactly 41 colony worlds. We control 312. And yet, he gestured at the display showing Earth's latest diplomatic response. They had the audacity to tell us, and I quote, "Thanks, but no thanks. We'll pass on your generous offer to strip mine our asteroid belt." A ripple of clicking, buzzing, and various forms of laughter echoed through the chamber. Kaldrex did not laugh. "You seem to forget, Ambassador, that audacity without power is merely stupidity, and stupidity in this galaxy tends to have a very short lifespan." The Supreme Coordinator's tail slammed against the floor, producing a sound that silenced everyone instantly. "I grow tired of these humans, and their persistent refusal to understand their place in the cosmic order. We offered them partnership. We offered them prosperity. We offered them a chance to join civilization." "Indeed, Supreme Coordinator," Vexthor agreed, his amusement fading. "And they responded by increasing their military production by 300%. The intelligence reports show they're building something in their outer colonies. Shipyards, weapons platforms, some kind of defensive network." Defensive. Kaldrex's laughter was like metal scraping against stone. How quaint, as if defense has ever stopped an empire's expansion. He turned to face the full assembly. "Members of the council, honored representatives, I propose we end this charade. Humanity has had ample opportunity to accept our terms. They have chosen confrontation over cooperation. Therefore, I move that we officially designate the human species as hostile entities and their territories as valid targets for annexation." Senator Quinksa, from the Heliorim Collective, raised one of her crystalline appendages. "Supreme Coordinator, if I may, perhaps we should review the intelligence data more thoroughly. The humans, they have this peculiar quality. I've been studying their history broadcasts. And their history," Kaldrex interrupted. "What could we possibly learn from a species that only achieved faster than light travel yesterday in cosmic terms?" "Well, that's precisely the point, Supreme Coordinator." Quinksa's voice carried a note of concern that Vexthor found oddly unsettling. "They achieved FTL travel without guidance, without uplift protocols, without any outside assistance whatsoever. In fact, according to the records, they went from primitive combustion rockets to warp-capable vessels in less than a century. That's unprecedented." Vexthor waved a dismissive claw. "Luck, random technological advancement. It happens. Rarely, but it happens." "Does it though?" Quinksa pressed. Sighed. "Reviewed their military history. Ambassador, did you know that humans have been in a continuous state of warfare with themselves for their entire recorded history? Thousands of years of conflict. They've developed more ways to kill each other than most species have words in their languages." "Primitive barbarism," Vexthor countered. "Which only proves our point. They need our guidance, our superior culture, They split the atom," Quinksa interrupted, her normally passive voice rising sharply, "and immediately weaponized it. Not eventually, not after careful consideration, immediately. And then they used those weapons on themselves. And somehow, they didn't go extinct. They just kept going, built bigger weapons, better weapons. And the whole time they kept fighting each other over every scrap of territory, every resource, every ideological difference they could imagine." The chamber fell quiet. Vexthor felt a small, uncomfortable sensation in his primary stomach. He pushed it aside. "Senator, Are you suggesting that we, the Thorxian Empire, with our vast armada and 17,000 years of military experience, should be concerned about a species that spends most of its time fighting itself? I'm suggesting, Ambassador, that maybe we should ask ourselves why a species that fights constantly is still alive, and why, despite all that internal conflict, they managed to spread to 41 worlds in 200 years. Supreme Coordinator Caldrex stood abruptly. Enough. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. I will not sit here and listen to fearful speculation about a species that doesn't even possess shield technology. Our scouts report that human vessels rely on something they call armor plating. Armor plating. Like some medieval ground vehicle. He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. They're sitting ducks wrapped in metal, and you want me to be afraid? I want you to be cautious, Quinxa said quietly. Caution is for prey, Senator. We are predators. Caldrex turned to face the assembly, his posture radiating absolute confidence. I call for a vote. All in favor of designating humanity as hostile and authorizing military annexation of their territories. Vexthor watched as appendages, tentacles, claws and various other limbs rose throughout the chamber. 43 out of 47 representatives voted in favor. Quinxa was not among them. The motion passes, Caldrex declared. Ambassador Vexthor, you will deliver our final ultimatum to the human government. They have 72 standard hours to surrender their sovereignty, dismantle their military, and submit to imperial authority. If they refuse, he smiled, exposing rows of serrated teeth, then we demonstrate why the Thorxian Empire has never lost a war. Vexthor bowed. It will be my pleasure, Supreme Coordinator. As the assembly dispersed, Vexthor noticed Senator Quinxa approaching. Her crystalline form refracted the chamber's light in unsettling patterns. Ambassador, she said softly, I hope you're right about this. Senator, with all due respect, hope has nothing to do with it. This is simple mathematics. We outnumber them. We outgun them. We have technology they can't even comprehend. This will be over before it begins. Perhaps. Quinxa was silent for a moment. Did you ever wonder why in all their history broadcasts, every single human conflict ends the same way? How's that? With survivors who refuse to quit. No matter how badly they're losing, no matter how outmatched they are, there's always some group of humans who absolutely will not stop fighting. They call it stubbornness. They treat it like a virtue. She paused. Ambassador, what do you call an enemy that doesn't know when it's beaten? Vexthor thought for a moment. Extinct eventually. Or terrifying. Quinxa turned to leave. I genuinely hope you're right, Ambassador. Because if you're wrong, we just made a very, very serious mistake. The human station designated Unity 7 orbited the fourth planet of the Kepler 442 system. It wasn't much to look at, Vexthor thought as his diplomatic shuttle approached. Just a rotating wheel of metal and composites, with docking ports extending like desperate fingers into the void. Primitive. The shuttle docked with minimal fuss, and Vexthor emerged into a corridor that smelled distinctly of recycled air and something else. Something organic that he couldn't quite identify. Two human guards stood at attention, weapons held across their chests. The weapons were, predictably, slug throwers. Actual projectile weapons that used chemical propulsion. Medieval. Ambassador Vexthor, one of the guards said, her voice flat and professional. Director Martinez is waiting in conference room 3. If you'll follow me. Vexthor followed, his diplomatic entourage trailing behind. He noticed that every human they passed stopped what they were doing and watched. Not with fear, not with awe, but with something else. Something in their eyes that made that uncomfortable feeling in his stomach return. They looked angry. Conference room 3 was exactly as unimpressive as Vexthor expected. A simple table, simple chairs, simple displays on the walls showing various star charts and tactical readouts. Seated at the head of the table was Director Elena Martinez, representative of the United Human Territories. She didn't stand when Vexthor entered. Director Vexthor began, his translator rendering his words into human standard English. I come bearing a final message from the Thorxian Empire and its allied systems. Let me guess. Martinez interrupted, leaning back in her chair. Surrender or die. Vexthor's mandibles clicked in surprise. Well, yes. Essentially. Though the official terminology is, don't care. Martinez waved a hand dismissively. You've got your ultimatum, I've got mine. So let's skip the formal nonsense and get to the point. You want our asteroid belt. You want our outer colonies. You want us to dismantle our defenses and bow to your empire. That about cover it. In crude terms, yes. Vexthor tried to regain control of the conversation. Director, surely you understand the position you're in. The Thorxian Empire controls 312 systems. Our military consists of 12,000 capital ships, 40,000 support vessels, and approximately 6 million combat-capable craft of various sizes. Yeah, we know. We can count. Martinez smiled. But there was no warmth in it. You want to know what else we can count, Ambassador? Vexthor said nothing. Martinez tapped her wrist device, and the wall displays changed. Suddenly, Vexthor was looking at detailed schematics of Thorxian vessels, complete with tactical assessments, weapons loadouts, and highlighted structural weaknesses. We know your shield generators take 4.2 seconds to reinitialize after a full power hit. We know your plasma cannons have an effective range of 30,000 kilometers but lose coherence rapidly after that. We know your heavy cruisers have vulnerable points along the lateral sensor arrays. We know your fighters rely on networked AI that can be disrupted with specific EM frequencies. Martinez stood slowly. We know everything about your military. Ambassador, every ship, every weapon, every tactical doctrine you've used in the last 500 years. That's impossible. Vexthor stammered. Our security protocols are adequate against most species, not against us. Martinez walked around the table. See, Ambassador, you made a critical error in judgment. You assume that because we're young we're stupid. You assume that because we fight among ourselves we're weak. You assume that because our technology looks primitive, it is primitive. She stopped directly in front of Vexthor, looking up at his considerably larger form without a trace of fear. You know what humans call it when someone makes assumptions like that? We call it fatal. Director Martinez. Vexthor tried to inject authority into his voice. You cannot seriously believe that you can stand against the entire Thorxian Empire. You don't even have proper shield technology. One of our battle groups could what? Martinez's eyes narrowed. Please, Ambassador, finish that sentence. Tell me what you think would happen if you attack humanity. The uncomfortable feeling in Vexthor's stomach had graduated to full-blown alarm, but he was committed now. The ultimatum had to be delivered. Director, the Empire has given you 72 hours to comply with our demands. If you refuse, we will have no choice but to use military force to bring your species into compliance. This is not a negotiation. This is a final warning. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then she started laughing. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Oh, Ambassador. Oh, you beautiful, idiotic, doomed creature. She walked back to her seat and sat down. Let me tell you what's actually going to happen. You're going to take your ultimatum, fly back to your Supreme Coordinator and deliver our response. Which is? Martinez's smile could have frozen hydrogen. No. Just, no? That's right. No, we will not surrender. No, we will not dismantle our defenses. No, we will not submit to your empire. And no, you really don't want to find out what happens if you actually try to enforce your demands. Vexthor felt his confidence crumbling, but pushed forward anyway. Director, I must warn you, rejection of this ultimatum is tantamount to a declaration of war. Good. Martinez stood again. Then consider this humanity's official response to the Thorxian Empire. She leaned forward, both hands on the table. Come get some. As Vexthor's shuttle departed Unity 7 2 hours later, he found himself reviewing the encounter over and over in his mind. The absolute confidence in Martinez's voice, the complete lack of fear, the detailed intelligence they somehow possessed about Imperial military capabilities. Senator Quince's words echoed in his thoughts. What do you call an enemy that doesn't know when it's beaten? For the first time in his long diplomatic career, Vexthor wondered if perhaps humanity did know when they were beaten. They just didn't care. Supreme Coordinator Caldrex listened to Ambassador Vexthor's report in complete silence. When the ambassador finished, the silence stretched for another full minute. Every member of the War Council present seemed to be holding their breath, or whatever their species did instead of breathing. Finally, Caldrex spoke. She said, "Come get some." "Yes, Supreme Coordinator." Vexthor's mandibles twitched nervously. Those were her exact words. The translator confirmed it 3 times. And they have detailed intelligence on our fleet compositions, tactical doctrines, and weapon systems. They displayed schematics that I've only seen in our highest security military databases. Supreme Coordinator, I don't know how they obtained them, but the information was accurate. Disturbingly accurate. Fleet Commander Zoraketh, a massive being whose species had evolved from apex predators on a high-gravity world, slammed one of his 4 fists on the strategic display table. It doesn't matter how much information they have. They're still outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed. So they know where our shield generators are. So what? They still have to get through our shields to hit them. With their primitive kinetic weapons, they might as well be throwing rocks. Commander Zoraketh raises a valid point, Kaldrex said, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. Senator Quingsa, you've been studying these humans. Explain their confidence. Is it simple insanity, or do they know something we don't? Senator Quingsa activated her own display, showing footage from human historical archives. Supreme Coordinator, I'd like to present 3 events from human history. First, a conflict they called World War II. One nation, significantly smaller and less populated than its enemies, held out against a coalition of the galaxy's most powerful human nations for 6 years. 6 years of continuous warfare. They eventually lost, but the cost to the victors was staggering. Ancient history, Zoraketh grumbled. Irrelevant. Is it? Quingsa changed the display. Second example, Vietnam. A small Southeast Asian nation fought the most technologically advanced military force on Earth at that time to a standstill. The larger power had air superiority, naval superiority, better weapons, better training, better everything. They lost anyway. Guerrilla warfare, Vexthor offered. Not applicable to space combat. Third example. Quingsa continued, ignoring the interruption. Afghanistan. Multiple superpowers, across different human eras, attempted to control this single mountainous region. All of them failed. The local population simply refused to stop fighting, no matter how many times they were defeated tactically. She paused. Notice the pattern. Humans don't quit. It's not in their psychological makeup. They will fight losing battles for decades if they believe the cause is worth it. Belief doesn't stop plasma bolts, Senator, Kaldrex said coldly. No, but it does something perhaps more dangerous. It eliminates fear of death as a deterrent. Quingsa pulled up another file. I also reviewed their entertainment media, their stories, their myths, their cultural touchstones. Supreme Coordinator, do you know what the most common theme is in human storytelling? Enlighten me. The underdog winning against impossible odds. Over and over again, in thousands of variations, they tell stories about smaller forces defeating larger ones through cleverness, determination, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They've been culturally programming themselves for thousands of years to believe that being outmatched just means you have to be smarter. Quingsa's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. What if they're right? Enough. Kaldrex stood, his full 3 meters of height dominating the room. I will not make strategic decisions based on fictional stories and ancient tribal conflicts. We have real military power, same mythology and attitude. This discussion is over. Fleet Commander Zoraketh, prepare the invasion force. Yes, Supreme Coordinator. Zoraketh's eyes gleamed with anticipation. How many battle groups should I deploy? Let's not waste resources. 5 battle groups should be more than sufficient to secure their outer colonies. Once they see several of their settlements burning, their resolve will crumble quickly enough. Vexthor cleared his throat. Supreme Coordinator, if I may, perhaps a larger force would be prudent. Director Martinez seemed unusually confident. Ambassador, with respect, your job is diplomacy. Mine is understanding strategic reality. 5 battle groups equals roughly 60 capital ships, 300 support vessels, and 1,500 fighters, against 41 loosely defended human colonies. Kaldrex's laugh echoed through the chamber. It's overkill already. I'm being cautious. Senator Quingsa said nothing, but Vexthor noticed her crystalline form had taken on a slightly dimmer hue, among her species that indicated profound concern. The meeting adjourned, and preparations began. Commander Zoraketh stood on the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Inexorable Conquest, watching the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel through the forward viewports. Around him, his bridge crew performed their duties with practiced efficiency. This was, after all, a routine operation. They'd done this dozens of times before with other stubborn species. approaching the human colony designated Proxima Station. His navigation officer reported. Exiting FTL in 30 seconds. All ships. Battle formation Delta 7. Zorketh ordered. Shields to maximum, weapons hot. But remember, we're here to intimidate first. Only fire if they're foolish enough to resist. The fleet emerged from FTL space in perfect formation. 5 battle groups arranged in an overwhelming display of military might. Proxima Station hung in the darkness ahead. A modest collection of habitats and industrial facilities orbiting a red dwarf star. It looked pathetically vulnerable. "Sir, we're being hailed by the station," communications reported. "Put them through." A human face appeared on the main screen. Male, middle-aged, with graying hair and remarkably calm eyes. "This is Governor Thompson of Proxima Station. I'm guessing you're here about that 72-hour deadline." "Governor Thompson, I am Fleet Commander Zorketh of the Thorxian Imperial Navy. You are in violation of Imperial decree. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded, and your population will be relocated safely. Resist, and we will reduce your station to debris. You have 5 minutes to decide." Thompson nodded slowly. 5 minutes. That's generous. Mind if I ask a question while we're thinking it over? Zorketh was taken aback by the casual tone. "What question? Did you bring enough ships?" "Enough." Zorketh gestured at the tactical display. "Governor, I have 60 capital ships, 300 support vessels, and 1,500 combat craft. Your station has perhaps a dozen defense platforms and maybe 30 patrol boats. What exactly do you think is going to happen here?" Thompson smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Well, Commander, I think about 90 seconds from now, you're going to realize that you've made a catastrophic tactical error. See, we humans have this saying, don't start none, won't be none. You started some, so now you're going to get some. Is that supposed to frighten me? Governor, I'm giving you one last. Contacts." The tactical officer's shout cut through Zorketh's threat. Multiple contacts emerging from FTL. Grid coordinates Charlie 7 through Mike 12. Numbers are, "Sir, I'm reading over 300 vessels." "What?" Zorketh spun to face the tactical display. Red icons were appearing across the screen like a plague of locusts. "That's impossible. Intelligence said the humans only had limited fleet assets." "Commander," his second-in-command said quietly, "intelligence was wrong." On the view screen, Governor Thompson's smile widened. "Oh, you thought these 30 patrol boats were our defense fleet? Commander, these are rescue vessels. You know, for pulling your survivors out of the wreckage. The HEU defense fleet is arriving right about now." The tactical display lit up like a festival of death. Human vessels appeared in perfect formation, surrounding Zorketh's fleet in a 3-dimensional sphere of doom. But these weren't the primitive vessels intelligence had described. These were sleek, deadly-looking ships bristling with weapons ports, and they were big, not as big as Imperial dreadnoughts, but numerous enough that size suddenly seemed irrelevant. "All ships. Evasive maneuvers," Zorketh ordered. "Return fire. Show these primitives what real military power." "Sir, they're launching." Tactical interrupted. "Missiles," Zorketh almost laughed. "Our shields will absorb." The human missiles never reached his ships. Instead, they detonated in a perfect sphere around the Imperial fleet, each one releasing a burst of electromagnetic energy that lit up Zorketh's sensors like miniature suns. "Sir, we've lost sensor lock on the human vessels. Switch to backup systems." "Backup systems are also jammed, sir. Whatever they just hit us with is broadcasting across every frequency we can detect." "Then fire blindly. Saturate the area with plasma bolts." The Imperial ships opened fire, their weapons creating beautiful arcs of destructive energy that lanced out into the darkness. And hit nothing. "Where are they?" Zorketh demanded. "I don't know, sir. They were there, and now they're not." "Wait, new contacts. Behind us, below us, above us, they're everywhere. Shields to maximum. All batteries, defensive pattern Omega." "Sir, the humans are firing." Zorketh braced for impact, expecting the weak kinetic rounds to bounce harmlessly off his shields. The first human projectile hit the inexorable Conquest's forward shields at what the sensors calculated to be 0.99% of light speed. The shield didn't absorb it. Shield didn't deflect it. The shield briefly registered its existence, and then failed catastrophically as the relativistic kinetic round transferred enough energy to overload every generator in the forward array. The round itself, a solid slug of depleted uranium wrapped in a tungsten jacket, punched through 40 meters of advanced armor plating like it was tissue paper, traveled the entire length of the ship's forward section, and exited through the dorsal hull, creating a hole you could fly a shuttle through. Damage report. Zoraketh roared. Forward sections 1 through 7 are gone, sir. Hull or breach on decks 2 through 15. We've lost primary weapons control, forward shield generators, and the damage control officer's voice trembled. And we've lost 3,000 crew. That was one shot. Yes, sir. And the humans are firing again. Across the battle space, the Imperial fleet was discovering that their assumptions about human weapons technology were lethally incorrect. The primitive kinetic weapons were actually railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to near light speed. The lack of shield technology was irrelevant when your ships were fast enough to avoid most fire, and your weapons hit hard enough to punch through any shield. And the humans had clearly studied every single Imperial tactical doctrine, because they seemed to know exactly where each ship would be before it got there. All ships full retreat, Zoraketh ordered. Emergency FTL jump scatter pattern Epsilon. Sir, the humans are targeting our FTL drives. They can't possibly target something that specific in this chaos. 3 of Zoraketh's dreadnoughts suddenly listed to one side as precisely aimed railgun rounds destroyed their faster-than-light drives, stranding them in normal space. Apparently they can, sir. Zoraketh watched in horror as his fleet, the pride of the Thorxian Empire, was systematically dismantled by an enemy that fought like they'd been doing this for centuries, instead of decades. The humans didn't just shoot. They coordinated, they flanked, they feinted and struck. They used the debris from destroyed Imperial ships as cover for devastating ambushes. They fought like they'd been born to it. This is Fleet Commander Zoraketh to all Imperial forces. Retreat immediately. I repeat, full retreat. Get to FTL range and jump. Leave the damaged ships. Just sicko. The surviving Imperial vessels broke formation and fled in every direction, desperately trying to reach the minimum safe distance for FTL engagement. The humans let them go. On the view screen, Governor Thompson reappeared. Commander Zoraketh, you still alive over there? You were supposed to be primitives, Zoraketh said, his voice hollow. Yeah, we get that a lot. Here's the thing, Commander. We are primitives. We don't have fancy shields, we don't have plasma weapons, we don't have half the technology you take for granted. You know what we do have? Thompson leaned forward. We have the kind of desperate ingenuity that comes from spending 10,000 years trying to kill each other with sticks, stones, and whatever else we could get our hands on. We learned to make every shot count because we couldn't afford to waste ammunition. We learned to move fast because we couldn't take hits. We learned to think 3 steps ahead because the enemy we were fighting was US, and we know exactly how we think. This isn't over, Zoraketh said weakly. Oh, Commander. It hasn't even started. You came here with 5 battle groups. We just destroyed or disabled 80% of them. Now take that ratio, multiply it by every other colony you might want to attack, and ask yourself a question. Thompson's expression hardened. Are you absolutely sure you want to keep playing this game? Because we've been practicing for a very long time. The transmission ended. Zoraketh's ship limped back to Imperial space with the scattered remains of his once proud fleet. Of the 60 capital ships he'd brought to Proxima Station, only 11 made it home. The support vessels fared slightly better, but only because the humans had focused their fire on the larger threats. 1,500 fighters went in. 203 came back. The emergency session of the Imperial War Council was less a meeting and more awake. Supreme Coordinator Kaldrex sat silent on his hover throne as Fleet Commander Zoraketh delivered his report. When the commander finished, Kaldrex turned to face Senator Quinsa. You tried to warn us, he said quietly. I did, Supreme Coordinator. I wish I had been wrong. What do we do now? Quinsa pulled up data on her display. The humans have transmitted a message to every Imperial world, every allied system, and every independent station within 100 light-years. They're broadcasting it on every frequency. Would you like to hear it? Kaldrex nodded. Director Elena Martinez's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired, but her voice was steady and clear. People of the Thorxian Empire and its allied systems, My name is Director Elena Martinez of the United Human Territories. Your leadership recently demanded our surrender and threatened us with military conquest. Today at Proxima Station, they learned that threats in reality are very different things. The image cut to battle footage showing Imperial ships being torn apart by human weapons. We did not want this war. We asked to be left alone. We offered peaceful coexistence. Your Supreme Coordinator chose violence instead. Martinez reappeared on screen. So here's what's going to happen next. Any Imperial or Allied ship that approaches a human colony or asset will be destroyed. Any military installation within 50 light-years of human space will be disabled. Any attempt to blockade or embargo human territories will be considered an act of war and responded to accordingly. She paused, letting her words sink in. We don't want your empire. We don't want your resources. We don't want your territory. We just want to be left alone. But if you insist on continuing this conflict, if you keep pushing, if you make us come to you, Martinez's eyes could have cut steel, then we'll show you what happens when you go to war with a species that's been perfecting the art of killing for 10,000 years. We'll show you what it means to fight an enemy that treats extinction-level threats as a Tuesday. We'll show you why, despite centuries of trying, we've never managed to wipe ourselves out. The transmission ended with a final message displayed in every known language. Leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. It's that simple. Ambassador Vexthor broke the silence. Supreme Coordinator, I believe we should accept their terms. Accept. Kaldrex's voice cracked. We're the Thorxian Empire, we've never accepted terms from anyone. Then perhaps, Senator Quinxa said gently, it's time we learned how. Kaldrex looked around the room at the faces of his council. He saw fear, uncertainty, and the dawning realization that the galaxy they thought they understood had just become a much more dangerous place. Very well, he said finally. Ambassador Vexthor, prepare a message to the humans. Tell them, tell them, tell them, tell them. We accept their terms. The Empire withdraws all claims to human territories and formally recognizes their sovereignty. Yes, Supreme Coordinator. As the council dispersed, Vexthor found himself standing beside Senator Quinxa. You were right, he said. About everything. I wish I hadn't been, Ambassador. Now we know the truth. What truth is that? Quinxa's crystalline form caught the light, creating rainbow patterns across the walls. That there's a species out there young and angry and absolutely terrifying in their capabilities. And we just made them prove exactly how dangerous they really are. The question now is whether anyone else in the galaxy is foolish enough to test them again. Vexthor looked at the tactical reports still displayed on his personal screen. The casualty numbers, the destroyed ships, the complete and total tactical failure. I sincerely hope not, Senator. I sincerely hope not. 3 months later, the Galactic Council formally recognized the United Human Territories as an independent sovereign entity. The vote was unanimous. No one wanted to be the next cautionary tale. And in the halls of power across 1,000 worlds, diplomats and military leaders alike learned a new rule of galactic politics. You can fight humans if you want, but you'd better bring everything you've got, because they certainly will.
If stories like this resonate with you, you are watching Sci-Fi HFY content. My channel is Sci-Fi HFY. So, please stay tuned to my channel for more interesting and engaging stories like this.